From the title alone, you would think that the strongest magician in the Demon Lord's army was a human is your typical isekai schlock. This is neither good nor bad. However, after watching it, I can tell you that it's even worse. While it is initially intriguing, it never manages to fully live up to that initial feeling. Maougun presents a story we've seen hundreds of times in anime. It's simple really. If you've watched enough anime, then you have seen this show. Episode 1 starts off with Ike leading some demons to capture a human city, and under his instructions, there are no casualties. Not only that, but he's actually nice to the humans, which is his main goal, since Ike wants to unite the humans and the demons to coexist. This is because he is a human that was raised by a demon. However, he needs to be careful not to reveal that secret. Well, that didn't work out too well now, did it? But don't worry, because this plot point never actually matters, just as many others don't. Watching Maougun was a strange experience in that regard. The story can be roughly split into one event every around 2 episodes, which makes it move along at quite a brisk pace. But despite that, it never feels like it's going anywhere, since most of the plot points just don't matter. Let me give you an example by continuing and talking about the story. After Ike gets caught with his pants off, he is teleported by his superior, who only exists for fanservice really, for a quick prank. Afterwards, they go visit the Demon Lord, who is rumored to be this fierce monster, but turns out to be this little girl. Not only is she strong, but she already suspects Ike of hiding something from her. But for the time being, she lets him be. Following that, Ike goes to spy in a human city, together with Sadie, where he learns that a group wants to attack his city that he conquered in episode 1. He then fends off the attack, but gets assassinated. Thankfully, he doesn't die from that, and then goes to meet the captain of the army that attacked him to see if they were behind the assassination. After a short scene, we learn that Ike can read minds, which he then not only uses to find out that the humans weren't responsible, but that it was one of their own, as he uses it on an entire group. At this point, I wasn't even done with episode 3, and multiple holes already opened up. Why does he not use his group mind reading, just to get all the information he needs instead of causing a scene inside of the human city? And surely, he's not the only person in the entire world who can use mind reading magic. I mean, what would happen if somebody uses it on Sadie or any other person that knows his secret? Surely the Demon Lord knows magic like that. Also, what is with the captain? She looks important, right? Well, no, because this is the last we see of her. Without bloating this review, I can tell you that this is how the story continues to progress. Things happen and never get resolved, or didn't even matter in the first place. A small spoiler, but do you remember the Demon Lord and how she suspected Ike of hiding something? Well, she didn't suspect him, she already knew, and that was before catching him with his pants down. Literally. Even the ending of the anime is like that, as all we get is a little closing monologue saying, "There once was a human in the Demon Lord army, and he went on many adventures." The end. Not only is this a lazy way to end the anime, but it kills all chances for a second season. At its core, this isn't even a bad story, and at times I thought, man, it's starting to get interesting, only for them to pull out the rug from under me every single time. What was more consistent though is the animation. Consistently bad, that is. I'm usually quite tolerant of the occasional CGI, even embracing it. After all, one of my favorite anime is Hosoki no Kuni, and it's almost entirely CGI. However, Maougun is on a whole different level of charring. They can't go more than a second without some truly awful CGI, breaking the immersion even further. But that is not all. The constant mixing of 2D and CGI makes the flaws just even more glaring. For example, there's the scene about halfway through where 3 demon generals and Ike are completely in CGI, while the only other person in the room remains in 2D. Or there are scenes where Ike is blinking in and out of CG on every single cut. It is almost impossible for me to imagine that somebody thought, yeah, that looks good, let's send it out. At this point, they should have just committed to full CGI instead of these constant half measures. It's all the more disappointing, because there are glimpses of what could have been, mostly in the second half. Moments like the cooking scene in episode 7 genuinely made me think that improvements were on the horizon. Or there was one point where they were fighting a pirate with magic, and the CGI in that looked actually kinda good. But every good moment like that is repaid tenfold with something worse. I would have been impressed if this was a student project, but this is not what this is. I really think they should have just gotten rid of these carrot on a stick moments and just embraced the CG in full. Maybe it would have turned out better that way. All the more shame here is that the music is actually really good in comparison. They managed to get a wide variety of tracks and managed to use them pretty well throughout. Honestly, the music never got stale and was one of my favorite parts of the show. That being said, there were no real standouts here that I could recall. What shocked me the most here, however, is the opening and ending. The opening Control C is a banger that I've been listening to pretty frequently ever since hearing it for the first time, and as such, I never skipped it. The song itself feels pretty wasted on the anime, and added to that, the animation itself is also pretty good and almost feels like a teaser of what could have been. The ending, on the other hand, was quite simple with its animation, scrolling through the core characters inside of a crystal ball. But the song used, I Still, is another banger. It is less on the groovy side, but has instead this melancholic feeling that almost invokes a kind of sadness one reaches at the end of a long journey. By the end of it all, I was looking more forwards to the opening and ending than I was to the actual anime. And this brings me to the pros and cons. As for the pros, they were really hard to think of. The opening and ending were fantastic, the characters were quite likable, and the story wasn't complete shit. But that being said, over on the cons, the story feels very much unfinished, and a lot of the plot points are just left wide open. They use an inexcusable amount of CGI, which is even worse when you think that a lot of the focus was on the battles, which just don't look good. And this brings me to the conclusion. Maougun is one of these cases where I really wanted to like the anime. I see what it tries to do, and some of the glimmers throughout almost cry out, saying that there is a good show here. But by the end, however, I can only say, don't waste your time. Some anime you should rather watch are the following two: The Faraway Paladin and The Unwanted Undead Adventurer. And with that, this review concludes. Do you agree or disagree with me? Are there other animes you want me to check out? Well, don't hesitate to go down below and leave a comment. And while you're at it, why not subscribe so that you don't miss out on future reviews?